Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim Anniversary Edition update for the Skyrim Special Edition. My name is Camel, and today we are going to be taking a look at a unique orcish two-handed axe called the Headman's Cleaver. I'll show you how to get and complete the related quest. We'll also run through all of its stats and how it works in game, or doesn't work in this case, how it compares to other two-handed axes, and we'll also talk about its lore, which interestingly comes from a game that was released after the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, that being the Elder Scrolls Blades. Now, timestamps for each section can be found down in the description, along with links to all of my social media. Be sure to follow me on Instagram and Twitter to keep up to date with what I am doing, and please do me a kindness and check out my merch store to pick up some more unique items like this Camel Elder Scrolls blanket, which will keep you warm and cloaked in lore while also helping me out greatly. And be sure to stick around until the end of the video for a nice and complicated orc family history lesson related to the Headman's Cleaver and its origins. With that said, let's get going and get our hands on this orcish piece of history. So the first thing we're going to need to do is actually get the related quest, which is called Blood in the Water. To do so, we're going to have to head to any of the many inns in Skyrim. There's always one in a major city or major settlement, town, whatever. Once we get inside one of them, we're going to need to speak to the innkeeper. But before we do, if you do like the look of my game throughout this video, be sure to check out my Skyrim Visual Overhaul mod list video that I just uploaded. It's a visual overhaul mod list that works for Skyrim Special Edition and Skyrim Anniversary Edition update. Once you've watched that, of course, we're going to need to ask the innkeeper if they know of any work for us, if they have any rumors, all these kind of options. Eventually, it took me about 3 inns before I got it, but eventually one of us will hand us a letter from Shogarz gra-Batul. We need to find this letter in our inventory and take a look at it. To all capable warriors, a group of bandits have stolen something of great value to my family's kingdom, the Headman's Cleaver, and fled to Skyrim like cowards. We believe they're remnant members of the Green Cap Bandits, who have been a thorn in the Queen's side from the day she was born. Our sources tell us they're holed up in Lost Knife Hideout, and as the Queen's strongest knight, I've been tasked with retrieving it. However, if I don't survive, I ask that you eliminate these bandits in her name. The Queen will gladly bestow the cleaver to the one who vanquishes her oldest enemy. Signed, Shogarz gra-Batul. Now, after reading this, we will have the quest called Blood in the Water, the very one we need. Now we'll need to head to Lost Knife Hideout, which is an ironic name as the Lost Knife is hiding in Lost Knife Hideout. So it should be called Lost Knife Hide In. Anyway, it can be found right here on the map in the southwestern corner of the Eastmarch Hold. So once we enter Lost Knife Hideout, in which the Lost Axe is hiding in, there is nothing too special. It's just a typical dungeon filled with bandits, Green Cap Bandits, and is a great place to test out the brand new best bow in the game, the Bow of Shadows. Click the link above to get your hands on that. Also, keep an eye out for treasures within this dungeon. There's lots of hidden chests and a few skill books. Now, once we reach the final room of the dungeon, we will have to face off against a number of bandits. In here is also the very man we've come here looking for, a unique orc leader, mysteriously named Darkwater Snake. And as we can see, he wields a unique battle axe on his back, this being the Headman's Cleaver, the very thing that we've come here for. Now take him out and then we can explore the rest of the room, where in the middle we can find a cage with a dead orc prisoner in it. This is the corpse of Shogarz gra-Batul, the very man who wrote the letter we received at the inn. On his corpse we can find his journal. Perhaps this will shed more light on, well, something at least. I've long suspected the Darkwater Snake is my older brother, Urzog. The fact that he would take on that moniker makes it all the more obvious. It may be that same poison that ran in my grandfather's blood is what made him betray us. Are we doomed to repeat the mistakes of our ancestors? Sometimes I wonder. So it turns out that the Darkwater Snake was his brother. Speaking of the Darkwater Snake, we need to go over and find his corpse, on which we can of course find the Headman's Cleaver that we came here for, but before we get to that, we can find Urzog's journal. We'll need to take a look at this. I've always beaten my little brother in everything. Cards, I had the better hand. Brawls, likewise. When we raced up the ramparts of the old castle, I would always be the first to reach the peak. Mother said the difference between myself and my brother was that he was a perfectionist and I was a conqueror. She said I wanted to beat him at everything, and it drove me to become a great warrior. But my brother didn't care for competition. As a perfectionist, he simply wanted to sharpen his skills and would work with others if he thought it would better himself. Mother said that's why he would make the better ruler. My brother would forever try to improve our standing, whereas I was content being better than the next man. Well, little did she know the next man was him. I'm going to enjoy killing you, little brother. Grandfather's venom may have failed to reach mother's veins, but it will still reach her heart. Uh-oh, orc drama alert. So, it would seem that Urzog gra-Batul, the Darkwater Snake, stole the Headman's Cleaver from the Bloodfall Queen and killed his brother Shogarz gra-Batul to get back at his mother. But they also mentioned that one of them was going to be chosen as a ruler by their mother, which would imply the Bloodfall Queen might just be their mum, but we'll get into that more complicated lore connection later on. As for now, we'll need to take the Headman's Cleaver and check out its stats and how it compares to other weapons of the same ilk, i.e. two-handed battle axes. Well, all battle axes are two-handed. Two-handed axes, which are known as battle axes. So the Headman's Cleaver has a base damage of 25, which is really quite high, on par with the Daedric battle axe and only bested by the Dragonbone battle axe, so it's off to a pretty good start. Now it has a swing speed of 0.6, which is actually slower than other battle axes, as they have a swing speed of 0.7. So in this regard, it is worse off. Now with its base damage of 25 and its swing speed of 0.6, we are left with a damage per second of 15. This leaves it a little worse off than the base damage would have led us to believe. However, this damage per second, this DPS, is still better than almost every other battle axe in the game, so it's still a pretty viable option for now. It has a reach of 1.35, which is actually 0.05 more than other battle axes, as they have a reach of 1.3. So it can reach slightly further, although it is bested by the huge reach of the Headman's Axe, which has a reach of 1.5, but that has a significantly lower DPS of 11.9. We'll talk a little bit more on the Headman's Axe later on, as just by name it's easy to confuse the Headman's Cleaver, which is a battle axe, with the Headman's Axe, which is also a battle axe. Anyway, the Headman's Cleaver has a weight of 24, which actually makes it one of the lighter battle axes in the game, but their weight doesn't vary much at all, so it's nothing special in regards to its heft. It has a value of 2,900, which is pretty big, but you probably won't be selling it. It can be upgraded with an orichalcum ingot and requires the orcish smithing perk to do so. And now on to the major fail. Following with the stereotype of buggy Bethesda, we have the enchantment. This weapon has no enchantment. Well, it does have an enchantment, but it's bugged. In the game data, there is an enchantment for this weapon that deals 20 points of stamina damage and 2 points of bleed damage for 5 seconds per second. Now, someone involved in the creation of this forgot to actually apply the enchantment to the weapon. Firstly, this is just unacceptable and could be fixed within minutes. Secondly, even if it is a lackluster enchantment, it's a unique item and tells a story and has an enchantment that matches the motif and backstory of the weapon, which is now missing, so the story as a whole of the Headman's Cleaver is reduced somewhat. Thirdly, the real Reen face-palming moment is the half-finished job. Between getting the quest and figuring out there was something very wrong with this weapon was about 30 minutes, yet it magically slipped Bethesda by somehow. So normally, a weapon not having an enchantment is fine, because you can just put a nice powerful enchantment of your choosing on it. Well, if you go to enchant the Headman's Cleaver, guess what? It doesn't show up. It cannot be enchanted. This is because the game thinks it is already enchanted, with its intended enchantment that they forgot to actually put on it. However, it's still labeled as being enchanted. Therefore, the game thinks it's enchanted, which means we can't put an enchantment on it. Now, this little creation adds 2 NPCs, 1 note, 2 journals, and a unique weapon. That's 6 things, and they couldn't even get that right. I think the QA testers need a good bonking on the head with this very weapon until they remember to put the enchantment on the weapon. Again, I figured out this problem within 20-30 minutes of starting the quest, but a company worth billions with hundreds of employees can't figure it out. Like, bruh, truly an orcful effort there. This cock-up makes the Headman's Cleaver, a would-be otherwise decent weapon, completely undesirable and redundant. So hopefully they fix this issue quickly, or the unofficial patch fixes it up. I think we know which is more likely and going to happen sooner. Anyway, let's talk about something actually cool and good about the Headsman's Cleaver, and that is its appearance. Visually, it is completely unique within Skyrim and reminds me somewhat of the previously mentioned Headsman's Axe, a hidden unique item in Skyrim that you can get by watching the video above, as it's not hard to get, but figuring out how to get it for yourself is a very unlikely occurrence. Now, the Headsman's Cleaver is about 50% handle with a grim and gruesome blade on the end, resembling a pole sword type of weapon. Something you'll probably know best from like kung fu movies is the guandao, which is, within the realm of what this weapon is based off of. Take that at a healthy dash of fantasy, and then you end up with the Headsman's Cleaver. Now, the base of the blade is blazoned with a brutal skull, which is actually the sigil of the Bloodfall Queen from the Elder Scrolls Blades, which leads us nicely into the more interesting stuff about the Headsman's Cleaver, which is its lore. Now, this weapon was actually introduced in the Elder Scrolls Blades, and can be received for completing the Bloodfall Queen questline. And as we can see in both the Elder Scrolls Blades and the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim Anniversary Edition, they look practically identical, which is always good for lore continuity, because sometimes the same weapon or item across different games looks entirely different. So the fact that it's the same weapon, I love that. Now, learning about the history of the Headsman's Cleaver involves a process that I have already gone through while writing this script, and one which you are about to go through. And that is the lesson that orc names all sound very similar. So, there was once an orc king called Durak Gro-Batul, known as the Bloodfall King. When the Great War began, Durak Gro-Batul left to fight the Empire, but before doing so he crafted a fearsome cleaver, known as the Headsman's Cleaver, the very same one in this video. The Bloodfall King Durak Gro-Batul gave the Headsman's Cleaver to his son, Barzul Gro-Batul, who would later be known as the River Snake. In his father's stead, Barzul Gro-Batul ruled and proved to be a terrible leader, using the Headsman's Cleaver to punish his citizens for even the slightest of crimes. When his father, Durak Gro-Batul, the Bloodfall King, returned from war and learned of Barzul's brutal leadership, he was disinherited as a member of the Gro-Batul family and was denounced as the heir to the throne. The Bloodfall King Durak Gro-Batul then named his granddaughter Urzoga gra-Batul the heir to the throne, Urzoga gra-Batul being the daughter of Barzul Gro-Batul. Now, when the Bloodfall King Durak Gro-Batul died, his granddaughter Urzoga gra-Batul rightfully took the throne and became the Bloodfall Queen that you may know or may not know from the Elder Scrolls Blades. Now, this is where things get interesting, as in Skyrim we have two orc brothers, Shogarz gra-Batul and Urzog gra-Batul, who is known as the Darkwater Snake. Shogarz gra-Batul being the dead guy in the cage who is in search of the Queen's stolen weapon, which as we now know is the Headsman's Cleaver, and we can assume that the Queen he talks of is the Bloodfall Queen, as the Elder Scrolls Blades and the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim take place at roughly the same time. And of course, the Bloodfall Queen was the possessor of the Headsman's Cleaver in the Elder Scrolls Blades, presumably having inherited it from her father Barzul Gro-Batul. Therefore, we can surmise that the Queen Shogarz gra-Batul is talking about is the Bloodfall Queen, Urzoga gra-Batul. Now, what's even more interesting is that Shogarz gra-Batul and Urzog gra-Batul both share the same family name with the Bloodfall Queen, Urzoga gra-Batul. And if we reread their journals, things will start to make more sense. In Shogarz gra-Batul's journal, he says, "I've long suspected the Darkwater Snake is my older brother Urzog. The fact that he would take on that moniker made it all the more obvious. It may be the same poison that ran in my grandfather's blood is what made him betray us. Are we doomed to repeat the mistakes of our ancestors?" Making a clear connection to their grandfather being Barzul Gro-Batul, the River Snake, which would make their mother the Bloodfall Queen, Urzoga gra-Batul. This is further confirmed in the contents of the journal of Urzog gra-Batul, the Darkwater Snake. Grandfather's venom may have failed to reach mother's veins, but it will still reach her heart. So these two orcs in Skyrim, Shogarz gra-Batul and Urzog gra-Batul, the Darkwater Snake, are sons of Urzoga gra-Batul, the Bloodfall Queen, and grandsons of the tyrant Barzul Gro-Batul, the River Snake, and great-grandsons of the Bloodfall King Durak Gro-Batul. That is why Urzog gra-Batul, the Darkwater Snake, took the headsman's cleaver, as it was the very weapon that his rotten grandfather Barzul Gro-Batul, the River Snake, used during his tyranny. Also, Urzog gra-Batul took the name the Darkwater Snake as homage to his venomous grandfather Barzul Gro-Batul, who was known as the River Snake, who Urzog gra-Batul clearly idolizes. So while your head may be spinning currently, there is a cool little lore connection, and I do hope that you found no trouble with not confusing Durak Gro-Batul, Barzul Gro-Batul, Urzoga gra-Batul, Shogarz gra-Batul, and Urzog gra-Batul with one another, while also not confusing them with other Elder Scrolls orcs like Urzoga gra-Shogarz, Batul gra-Sharob, Urzog gra-Shadbuk, Shagrol gra-Urzog, Ughash gra-Batul, Shogarz, Durak, and of course, Durak. So as I said before, orc names, they're pretty hard to follow. There should be a separate skill tree for them, because we'd all be level 100 at this point after following that story. And with that, I do believe we have covered absolutely everything you need to know to get your hands on the headsman's cleaver and give you enough of an insight into its mechanics, and get a good idea of how it works, or in this case, doesn't work with its dodgy enchantment, along with a lore run through to make wielding or even just owning such a weapon more interesting and full. I'd love to know if you have any other tips or tricks or pieces of information or anything that I've missed about the headsman's cleaver. If you do come up with any cool build ideas or ways to use it, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Very rarely do I play an orc character, so it could be a cool weapon to use. Also, let me know what other Anniversary Edition content you would like me to make videos about so I can help you out there. Be sure to check out my social media links down in the description, follow me on Instagram and Twitter, along with checking out the merch store. It's a great way to support the channel while also getting something cool at the same time. If you did enjoy this video, leave a like and subscribe for more useful and interesting Elder Scrolls content, as I'm sure you know, all of my time and energy goes into making these videos that I create for you to enjoy. So if you would like to support my channel in a more personal way, you can become a patron on Patreon or become a member right here on YouTube, or again, check out the merch store. Your support is most welcomed and appreciated in any and all forms. So thank you very much for supporting the channel, thank you very much for watching. I've been Camel, and I will see you very shortly in the next video. I'll see you there soon.